against my wife. It was committed against you, all of you. So if that makes you angry or feel misrepresented, do something about it. When Benjamin Franklin left Independence Hall just after the second drafting, he was approached by a woman on the street. The woman said, "Mr. Franklin, what manner of government have you bequeathed us?" And Franklin said, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it. The responsibility of a country is not in the hands of a privileged few. We are strong and we are free from tyranny as long as each one of us remembers his or her duty as a citizen. Whether it's to report a pothole at the top of your street or lies in a State of the Union address, speak out, ask those questions, demand that truth. Democracy is not a free ride, man, I'm here to tell you. But this is where we live. And if we do our job, this is where our children will live. God bless you.
I'm John DeMay, and I approve this message.
Since the beginning of the 21st century, the American people have had their freedoms and liberties slowly taken away from them. Americans can no longer speak freely in public, nor can they protest peacefully without fear of arrest or bodily harm done to them by the very people they elected into office. It's time to elect a person that will fight for the Constitution and not against it. That person is John DeMay Jr. As president, John DeMay will restore America's freedoms and liberties to the American people. He will nullify any executive order, any law that is unconstitutional, and bring power back to the states. This presidential election, vote for John DeMay Jr. A vote for DeMay is a vote for our Constitution. John DeMay Jr., restoring the Constitution to the American people. Paid for by the campaign to elect John DeMay Jr. for president 2016.
As a parent, you can't help but look at your child and dream about what the future holds. But while you're dreaming, consider this. The odds that your child will be diagnosed with autism are 1 in 68. Knowing the signs of autism and addressing it early can make a whole world of difference. To learn the signs, visit talkforautism.com. That's talk4autism.com. This public service announcement is brought to you by Talk for Autism, the Ad Council, and this station.
Well, we're back, and I'm back. I can't believe it. Been having some interesting internet issues. I don't know. I didn't get to hear the very beginning of the show, but I'm traveling now, and just got to the hotel where I'm staying just about 30 minutes before time to air, and trying to get the computer to work and the internet to work has been a challenge. But we're back, and I'm going to stay with you as long as I can. We're glad that you're listening, and we want to remind you that we have a call-in number. Nick, what is that number?
Well, Steve, the call-in number, if you want to call in and join the conversation, is area code 651-447-5595. That number again, area code 651-447-5595. Give us a call. We'd love to hear from you.
We would love to hear from you. With the three of us here, we can certainly keep the conversation going, but we would love for you to add to that conversation and give us your perspective. We promise we'll be nice. So if you get a chance, give us a call. We would love to hear from you. As I mentioned, I've been traveling, and in fact, have kind of been... I've had my head to the grindstone the last several days, and so have not been able to keep up a lot with the news. And today I was traveling all day, and so it made it very difficult for me to keep up with what's going on. But it's another great reason why I love having Lisa as a part of our team here. She is an excellent researcher, and she puts together our notes so that we'll have something to talk about every week. And she wrote a novel this week. Isn't that right?
I sure did. I'm really thankful for the internet. I don't know how news programs handled putting together shows before the internet, because I just hop online and start pulling things from here and there and everywhere, and before I know it, I've got umpteen pages of things we can talk about.
Oh,
Well,
I can answer that question. Teletype.
Oh, teletype.
yeah,
Well, sure.
yeah.
Hmm.
Well, you should actually send a thank you note to Al Gore.
Yeah, that's right, because he invented the internet. That's right, in his
That,
dorm room at Yale.
Oh,
Hmm.
yeah.
what?
So you ought to send an email, or a thank you note and say thank you so much for inventing the internet.
I'll get right on that.
It's a shame that the internet was around before he was at Yale, but that that
Pesky
fact
details.
Yeah.
facts don't always
Well,
coincide with liberal speak.
well, apparently global warming was, here before he got the Nobel Peace Prize too. So, but
Whatever.
yeah. Anyways, moving on with the show here. And that was the wrong file I wanted to play. But we got a debate update with the Republican debate. The fallout from the first Republican debate has had time to settle down, and we've seen some interesting things shake out. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Lisa?
Well, I tell you, last month when public policy polling did their checking around in North Carolina, they found Donald Trump was leading the Republican field, and it was the first poll by anyone anywhere that found Trump out in front. At that time, he was at 16%, but their newest poll that came out this week has him continuing to grow. He's now at 24%. With Ben Carson at 14%, 13% for Jeb Bush, 10% for Ted Cruz, 9% for Marco Rubio, and 6% each for Carly Fiorina and Mike Huckabee and Scott Walker. So those folks have pretty much the top 8 slots. Rounding out the field at the bottom are Rand Paul at 3%, Chris Christie and Rick Santorum at 2%, John Kasich and Rick Perry at 1%, Jim Gilmore, Bobby Jindal, and George Pataki with less than 1%. And Lindsey Graham has literally no supporters.
Oh, too
Well,
bad.
after the debate, I mean, the ratings in terms of followers, the polling was radically different before before the debate as opposed to after the debate. We saw people like Carly Fiorina jump 6 or 8 places.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, who was slotted in number 2 slot before the debate, dropped down.
Yes.
Yes. about 8 spots too after the debate.
Right.
So-
and Chris Christie, who had been considered possibly one of the forerunners, has just sort of slid into the basement.
There
along
are
with
several.
Rand Paul.
There are several that are currently in the race that I think it's over. I think it's over for them.
I think you're right. I think Rick Perry is one of those. I understand he has stopped paying his staff. So it won't surprise me if we hear an announcement that he's pulling out of the race. The public policy polling said that Trump's 8-point gain gives him the biggest momentum in the state over the last month. The other 2 candidates with upward momentum are Carson and Cruz. Carson's gone from 9% to 14% as people's first choice. Beyond that, he's 21% of voters' second choice, making him the clear leader on that front. And his 66-11 favorability rating makes him the most popular of the GOP hopefuls in the state. Cruz has gone from 6% a month ago to his 10% standing now. So that is really, really good news for Dr. Carson.
Right.
Well, and I'll tell you, the surprise to me is Donald Trump.
Oh, see, Trump doesn't surprise me at all. I think, granted, I don't really like the guy. I mean, that's just me. I don't really like him. But I think the reason why he's gaining so much support is because he is refusing to be politically correct. Where, one press conference where, one reporter was asking, why do you call them anchor babies? Referring to illegal immigrants that have children here in the United States. Instead, the reporter is saying, why don't you just call them children children of undocumented workers. And he just shook his head and said, no, I'll just say anchor baby. Thank you.
Right, right. Yeah, he was very, very irritated by that question, and it was very clear he was irritated. He thought it was absolutely the most ridiculous question he'd been asked all day. Why would they waste his time, basically, with such a ridiculous question? It was very clear that that was an irritation to him, and I agree with you, Nick. I think that he has tapped into this underlying frustration with all things politically correct.
Right. Well, and honestly, I think because he has done his homework when it
Yes.
when it comes to the politics here in America, where a lot of people on the Republican side are sick and tired of this political correctness. I mean, it literally has gone way overboard.
Well, he is kind of a phenomenon for that very reason. He is not depending on someone's donation to run his campaign. So he can
Right.
stand up flat-footed and say what he wants to say and be very outspoken. And I got to tell you, not many politicians are able to do that.
No, that's right. That's right.
They-
He doesn't have to worry about where his contributors are, or what his contributors are going to say, or what his handlers are going to tell him to do, because he's not going to do what anybody tells him to do. He's going to do what he wants to do, and nobody can tell him otherwise. He doesn't
That's
have
right.
to answer to anyone for his money.
That's right.
So that's the difference there. Another thing that was interesting in this public policy poll is that a higher than usual 20% of Democratic primary voters in North Carolina identify themselves as conservatives. And with that group, Hillary only gets 26%, which is what keeps her to a 55% overall, despite being over 60% with both liberals and moderates. The other only other group Clinton's under 50% with is white voters, among whom she leads Sanders 47 to 25. Clinton trails 8 of the 11 Republican hopefuls in hypothetical matchups. 8, although most of the margins are close. The strongest performers against her are Ben Carson, who leads her 47 to 40, and Marco Rubio, who has a 45-41 advantage. Carson and Rubio have been the strongest performing Republicans in the general election in all 3 of the polls that they have done since the debate. So
Right.
I think that really bodes well for Dr. Carson and Marco Rubio. So some who are up are down, and some who are down are up. We still have a long way to go until
Right.
November of 2016. You can rest assured we are watching these candidates. Who's going to drop out? Some are already close. Like I said, I think there may be an announcement imminent. Stay tuned for next week's show.
Right.
Well,
in
truth, I think that probably a third of the candidates, the race is over. But for 2/3 of the candidates, it still could be anyone's race.
Right.
Well, and here's one thing that I want to point out for the conservative voters out there, especially if they're on the Trump bandwagon or whatever, or maybe they're on the Cruz bandwagon and they're low in the polls. You remember back to the last the 2008 2012 presidential election where Michelle Bachmann was actually leading the polls, even won the Iowa straw poll.
Yes.
And I mean, she took that away. But as as the primaries came, the New Hampshire primaries and the rest came, she drastically dropped. So I mean, right now, I mean, even though some might only have 1%, 2%, whatever, it's still anyone's game with
Right.
with this many people.
That is certainly true, and there are some surprises of some who have plummeted. Jeb Bush, frankly, slipping as much as he has actually been a surprise to me. Although I couldn't find myself supporting his candidacy, everyone was saying he was the obvious front runner. And then Trump came in and kind of stole the show away, and so Trump was able to steal the lead. But during the debate, Bush was number 2, and that's not the case anymore.
Well, I think that the media has said that he was the obvious front runner. I have not met one person, nor have I talked to one person online. Now, I'm in several conservative groups online.